Hey guys, welcome to the Grateful Anglers Podcast. I'm Big John.
And I'm John Bondi. And today we're fortunate enough to have Ontario Conservation Officer Kevin Sprague on the program.
Welcome to the show, Kevin.
No
Thanks
problem.
for coming.
John.
We had asked you guys to submit your questions online for Mr. Sprague, and you guys came through. So we've got a list of questions pertaining to fish and game laws in southwestern Ontario. Not so much as why things are the way they are, but what are the laws pertaining to, fishing and hunting in this area. So
this is going to be great. This will be great for some of our American friends too, who really enjoy fishing our Canadian waters. Well, hopefully this answers some of the questions for you if you're traveling down here. And yeah, so
Kevin brought also some license holders. Come on down. We got a lot of these things, some tape measures for your boat.
Nice.
Got a lot of that stuff. But let's talk about our great giveaway that we still got going on here.
Ooh,
If you come on down to Bondi's Fishing Shop, 3796 County Road 17, and make a purchase, you could enter into our big giveaway that's going for the whole month of March. So here are the things that we got so far to give away. We got a great selection of Dominic's jigs from Damo's Custom Tackle. That's like 4 pounds right there of lead right there.
Yeah, and I was talking to Damo. He's pouring a lot of jigs every day.
He's selling a lot.
And his wife's putting those eyes on. They're busy over there.
We got a big selection of Slim Shady's custom baits here that Big John gave to us for this giveaway.
Another great guy, Slim Shady. He's from the States and does amazing paint jobs. He not only does the bandits, but he does husky jerks and all kinds of different baits. He custom paints them, and just check them out. Great
we got
guy.
from Fishing Complete in Michigan. We got a old wacky starter kit. If you want to learn how to wacky rig Senkos type baits, that's the kit for you. It's got everything in here.
That's awesome. And I'd like to thank Jerry Toner for coming and dropping that off to us. It's awesome.
We got a tactical fishing jigging special.
Thanks, Derek. I'm wearing your hat today, buddy.
These things have been flying out the door. Bondi's is giving up some line and a Fluger President to go with it.
Wow.
Yep.
You're actually opening your wallet for once.
The flies flew out. Yep. We got some lots of Bondi plastics going in there.
Jeez.
And one of the biggest contributors lately, we got 50 packs for this giveaway alone of Angler's Choice plastics. We're gonna have to really step it up.
Guys, couple last minute donations for our March draw here. Look at this, guys. Yali Fish Lures sent us some hooligans, some moon eyes for all you trollers out there. And I love these hooligans. I haven't had a chance to try the moon eyes yet, but I can't wait to, and I hear nothing but awesome things about them. And look, guys, just in time for jigging season, Lure Lipsticks is sending a bunch of plastics. So this is going to be a lucky winner, and thank you guys for these last minute donations. And yeah, this is going to be awesome. This is a big package going out to somebody this month.
Let me tell you, the next giveaway starting in April is going to shock you.
Oh yeah,
it's going to be big.
I don't think we're going to talk about that yet.
We're not talking about it.
It's coming to a theater soon.
So let's get going here with Officer Sprague. We're very fortunate to have him, and he's been around a long time. He knows the answers to these questions. We didn't get all your questions in, there's just too many, but we got some important ones. Some are basic, you probably already know the answer, but some are a little more tricky. So Big John, why don't you get going here and read the first question that was submitted for him.
Well, first I'd like to say thanks to Mr. Sprague for coming on the show, and he's a great guy. Don't be intimidated. Excuse me. Don't be intimidated if he comes up to your boat. He's a great guy. I'm sure you do a lot of fishing and hunting yourself, and not really, or when you get a chance.
That's all I know how to do.
And he's basically one of us too, guys. So, I guess I'm kicking off the first question, and you might see us look down today, guys, because we got all your questions written down. I'm not used to reading off a piece of paper, but I'm going to do it today. So.
My daughter typed all these out.
Well, she did a great job.
She's awesome.
Okay, so can you dispose of fish guts by throwing them in our local waterways? And if not, why?
So I'm gonna answer most of these questions to the context of down here,
Okay.
like Windsor area, Southern Ontario, as opposed to Northern Ontario, because it could be a different answer.
Okay.
The province is so big, and the north is different than the south. So especially with this question, so fish guts. I advise people not to dump their fish guts into, for example, the Detroit River.
Okay.
And I say that because if you dump them in the river, there's a good chance they're going to float up onto someone's beach or in the boat launch or on private property. As you know, down here is lots of private property as opposed to Northern Ontario where it's crown land, and if you're camping, there's bears, etc. It's different, right? So if you throw them in the river here and they wash up onto someone's private property or a beach or in the boat launch, you could be liable for that because you caused it to wash up there.
I got you.
So I advise people to not throw them into the river. To, when you take them home and clean them, freeze them and put them out in the garbage for garbage day.
Okay.
Or if you live in a rural area like I do and you own lots of property, go ahead and throw them in the back. And or if your neighbor's a farmer, ask him for permission and see if you can go throw them in the field. And it makes for good wildlife viewing opportunities. The eagles, hawks, coyotes, foxes, raccoons will eat it all up in the day. So that's what I tell people.
That's kind of what I do. I put it in the back 40 there for the coyotes and raccoons and all them to enjoy. And it's far enough away from the highway that, you know, the coyotes and stuff, they're not going to get injured up on the road or cause an accident. So,
I mean, if you're in the middle of Lake Erie or Lake St. Clair, chances are the seagulls are going to eat them pretty quick.
Okay.
So it's not a clear answer for you.
Yeah.
It's a case-by-case basis, but Detroit River, I wouldn't throw them in the river.
So technically speaking, is it illegal to dispose of fish guts on federal property? Because it's waste, essentially.
No.
It's not.
No, we're talking about the waterways.
It's natural. It's a natural, and that will decompose or likely get eaten.
The seagulls are very likely going to eat them before they wash up on shore. But the river's so narrow, right, and the waves and.
So it's not illegal, but you caution against it.
Yes, because if they wash up on private property, you could be liable for it.
Okay.
And it give fishermen a bad name.
Right. Question 2.
So,
if you're fishing by yourself or in a group, and put your limit in the live well, can you continue to fish and cull out smaller fish in exchange for bigger fish?
Yes, there's a number of conditions. It only applies to 4 species: walleye, smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, and northern pike. So it can only be those 4 species that you can cull. It can't be panfish, perch, crappie, salmon, trout.
I didn't know that.
It's only those 4 species.
See, this is good because this video, I'm gonna watch over and over again, so I know. Okay, yeah, I was wrong there. You know, we're gonna learn stuff today, guys.
I didn't know that.
That's what this show's all about.
I didn't know it was certain species. That's news to me.
And I don't know the answer to every question. I'll tell you that right now. I'm not an encyclopedia.
We're not holding you to it.
You can even ask my wife.
Yeah.
We won't go there.
So it applies to those 4 species, and then there's some other conditions. You have to have a live well in your boat that's part of the boat or attached to it. It can't be a 5-gallon pail.
Okay.
You have to have water that's continuously running into it.
Circulating, yep.
So an aerator.
Yep.
You have to have a water flow, so a hole where it goes out of the boat and flows out.
Okay, so it just can't be aerated water.
Correct.
You have to be replenishing the water as well.
Recirculating.
And it has to be a live well that's at least 10 gallons, can hold at least 10 gallons of water.
Okay. Well, that's good. I could fit a 4-year-old in my live well if I wanted to use it as a swim pool.
So if you're doing that, you're good to go. The one other thing to watch is if you're culling and you take a fish out of the live well and put it into the water and it's half dead or it can't be released, you can't cull it because then you're wasting fish suitable for human consumption. No, so it has to be a fish that can actually live and swim away.
Okay, perfect. The next question, I think it's pretty much self-explanatory, but I'm going to read it off to you anyways. Do you have to eat the limit of fish that's in your freezer before you can go out and catch your next limit?
Yeah, so if you catch whatever species of fish it is, and there's a limit attached to it, and you catch them, keep them, and bring them home, they're yours. They're considered in your possession. They're your fish.
Okay.
So before you can go out again and catch more fish, you either have to eat them or you can give them away.
Okay. Yeah, I figured that one was pretty much self-explanatory.
So
once you eat them or give them away, the next day you can go out again and catch up to your limit again. But
as long
you
as
can,
those fish are gone.
you can only have up to, well, let's use walleye down here on a sport fish license. You can only have at any time 6 walleye in your possession.
per
Okay.
family member, correct?
So if you give fish away to someone, they don't require a license. I can give my 6 walleye to my grandma. She doesn't need a license. Or my uncle or cousin Tom.
What about your wife in the same home
You can give the 6 fish to her too.
and your 12 kids?
Yes.
One more thing while we're on limits, and it wasn't on this sheet, but you can answer it or you can't. You don't have to answer it. But there's a few days a year where you don't need a fishing license in Ontario. They have this program to try and get more people out there fishing.
Family-free fishing.
Family-free fishing. So 2 questions on that is, when they catch their limit on those days, are they allowed to keep a sportsman limit or a conservation limit?
Conservation.
Okay, so it's got to be the lower of the 2.
Yep. So
Okay.
there's 2 different
That's a good
licenses:
question.
sport
Okay.
fish and conservation. And
Okay.
during the family-free fishing times, conservation
conservation.
limits apply.
So remember, guys, look up your limits. If you plan on getting people out that have never fished before, look up the conservation limits because it's different from the sportsman. I'm not even sure what the local limit is for conservation around here. Is it 3 walleye or?
Well, that's a
It's
common
2.
mistake that people
2.
make.
Yeah.
They think it's half. It's not. For walleye, it's 2.
Okay. Okay. Yep.
If you're fishing and give your 6 first walleye to someone on another boat because they're struggling, okay, you've kept 6 walleye, given it to someone else, can you then go and keep the 6 that you want to bring home? Or have you kept 12 technically?
No, you would be over your limit because you've caught and retained more than your limit of fish. The only way you can continue fishing is if you catch and release.
Good.
So once you've caught your limit, even though you've given them away, you're done.
Okay, so we've got some questions about, a lot of people are asking about the new bait fish rules.
Is this one me?
This is for you, but we're talking about live. We're going to
Okay.
talk about live
You know what?
minnows now.
I'm supposed to read this one, but you know what? Johnny's
I'm
got
gonna let Big John.
Johnny's got the American accent, so I'm gonna let him read this one and the next one to
All
you.
right.
Go ahead,
Okay,
Johnny. Use your American accent for this.
If we was crossing the river, no, okay. Can American anglers cross the river, the Detroit River, from Michigan into Ontario, say, with Michigan caught live emerald shiners, say,
Okay.
or worms, live? Do they have to, can this be done, or do they have to all be dead? There's some new bait fish rules, so there's a lot of questions. Guys coming from Michigan bringing minnows across. I'm sure this is something you would rather not deal with, but technically, can a Michigan angler cross the international boundary
By boat.
by boat with live minnows?
No. But they can cross with dead ones.
What if they come by car into Ontario over the bridge? Can they carry live minnows by car over the bridge into Ontario?
No. They have to buy them. Worms, the ministry doesn't regulate worms, but the CFIA, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, and the Canada Border Services Agency would be the folks to talk to about importing worms, dirt, that type of
Okay.
thing. We don't regulate it.
We're going to get into more bait fish questions later, but that's pretty clear at this point.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's actually one that I never knew about. So
Okay.
I wonder if it's vice versa too for us to. I mean, I'm sure Kevin can't answer that one,
I
but
don't
I'm
know.
wondering if we can bring minnows over to the U.S. waters too. So that's a question for them over there.
Can you bring multiple kids on your boat and have each of them, as well as you, catch and keep a limit of fish?
So it's different for residents, Canadian residents, as opposed to non-residents. So for Canadian residents, each kid is allowed their own sport fish limit of fish. If they're under 18, they don't need a license. They just need to carry ID with something that has their date of birth on it and name. They are allowed their own limit of fish.
Perfect.
So if you're with your father and he has a sport fish license, he can catch his own 6. The kid can catch his own 6, keep them. You're allowed the 12, no issues.
Okay.
Non-residents, they have to fish with someone who has a license. So the kids under 18 have to fish with someone who has a license. The fish they catch go on that person's license. So if the kid doesn't have a license but father does, you're only allowed the limit of fish that the father's license allows him to catch. But the kid can also purchase his own license if he wishes, and then he would be allowed his 2 or 6, depending on what type of fishing
Okay.
license he has.
That's very clear.
Yeah, perfect.
Next question, Big
Okay,
John.
okay. So the next question here: Can you use a perch eye for bait as long as you plan on keeping the perch?
Yes, if you're keeping the perch to eat, they count on your possession limit. You can take the eye out of them and use them as long as you're keeping that fish and retaining it.
I would probably recommend that maybe you bleed the fish out first and not torment it, but yeah, that's good to know.
Well, if you cut the eye out, it won't see you coming with the knife.
But yeah, you can do it. Obviously, you can't release the fish once the eye's out, and you'd be wasting it. But so you have to keep it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do it.
Try to do it in a humane way,
right.
guys. Okay, Johnny boy.
If I have both a Michigan and Ontario license, say for the Detroit River, can I keep a daily limit from both sides?
That's a good question.
So I'll have basically a double limit by claiming, oh, I caught half of these over there, half of them over here. I believe you cannot. Can you clarify that?
Yeah, you're right. You can't, because it doesn't matter where you caught the fish. They're all going to be deemed to have been caught in Ontario. And if you have a sport fish license for walleye, you're allowed 6. Conservation is 2 walleye, and it doesn't matter where you caught them. They're going to be deemed to have been caught in Ontario.
Awesome. Okay, so there's a lot of new bait fish rules kicking around. So if you net minnows on the Detroit River, can you use them, like, let's say up in the Thames River, or?
No, you would have to use them in the Great Lakes or the connecting waters, which is the connecting waters is the Detroit River or the St. Clair River. You couldn't go up the Thames because that is a bait management zone, the southern bait management zone, and you can't take them into a bait management zone. The Great Lakes isn't actually a bait management zone, it's just on its own.
Okay.
So if you catch them in the Detroit River, you have to use them on the Detroit River or the connecting waters.
Okay, so there's different rules versus of driving your boat versus car in possession of bait. So if you net minnows in the Leamington Marina, can you go by car and take them to Lake St. Clair to use them, or do you have to go by boat?
You would have to go by boat because you're catching them in Lake Erie, Great Lakes, then you're taking them by car inland in the bait management zone, which you're not allowed to do. Even though you're going back to the Great Lakes zone, you're traveling overland, which is a bait management zone, and you can't do it.
So that's like, you can't use them on the Thames, you can't
Nope.
cross. Okay, so
Go by boat, yes.
Go by boat. So I can net minnows in the Detroit River, take my boat, drive all the way to the top of Lake Superior and use them, but I can't drive them there in my vehicle.
Well, good luck driving
Correct.
all the way to Lake
See?
Superior.
I want to see that.
You can take your boat to Lake Superior and use Detroit River minnows.
We're gonna
but
do
you-
that
you
one day. We're
can't-
gonna see if John Bondi can make it to Lake Superior in a day.
It's a
I'm
good
not
question.
going.
Yeah.
If I was on a freighter and I scooped them with a bucket in the Detroit River, I can use them in Lake Superior, but I can't go there by car with that bucket.
So I guess that leads us to our next question. What can you do differently if you buy your minnows from a licensed dealer as far as traveling with them versus netting them yourself?
So let's say you live in the area here, you're going fishing, you go to a bait shop, like John's a bait shop owner, you come here and buy minnows. your primary residence is in the southern bait management zone,
Okay.
you don't require a receipt.
Okay.
You can then obviously drive with those minnows from the bait shop to wherever you're going fishing, the Great Lakes,
Okay.
or within that bait management zone, which is big. The southern bait management zone is big. There's 4 of them in the province.
Okay.
And you can then drive them, which allows you to drive them by car to where you're going to fish with.
Cool.
As opposed to, like I said, if you were catching them in the Detroit River or Lake Erie, you wouldn't be allowed to travel with them by car. You buy them at the bait shop, and
Yeah.
then you can.
And you know, guys, that's one thing I just want to make a point of. A lot of people say, oh, the cost of minnows are high nowadays. Well, these bait shops and the people who actually catch minnows, they pay big money for licensing to do this. And there's a lot of rules behind it. So that's why the cost of minnows isn't what it
You know
used to
what?
be.
We've kept our minnow prices very low, and I'm going to be flat out honest with you. As a bait shop owner, I've had my license for selling bait for over a year, and I haven't made any money at it.
No, but it's something that you need as
You
a
have
bait
to
shop.
have it.
Yeah.
You have to have it. I'm pretty sure I've lost money on my minnow strategy here, but if you don't have them, people don't come in the door. So, you know, we give you a healthy scoop, and I don't know. It's just a necessary evil as far as a bait shop owner goes. All right, next question. Can you leave the ramp with your limit of walleye still alive, with the water still in the well, or do you have to kill them before driving away from the ramp and draining your well?
So fish have to be killed. If you're transporting them over land, you can't transport live fish.
Done.
Okay.
Next
Well,
question.
okay.
Just add on that, you also now have to drain your live well and the bilge, so pull the plugs. You have to remove seaweed and algae and all that stuff. You can't trailer your boat down the road with water in it anymore. Pull the plugs, pull the weeds and stuff off, and the theory is to prevent invasive species from going up the road to another
Spread.
lake.
Yeah, I've heard that. Cool. So this is question 13. What do you do if you suspect that you have caught a new invasive species? Keep it for verification?
Verification, yeah. Keep it. Like, I mean, say you caught something and you don't know what the heck it is. Should you hang on to it? I mean, we know what a goby looks like.
Honestly, I'm letting it go. But is that right or wrong? I don't know.
So if it's a goby, gobies have been around for not years but decades now. We know they're here. You don't need to report it. They've infiltrated the whole Great Lake system. We know they're here. If you catch one, kill it and throw it back in the water.
And you can't use a goby for bait yet.
You can't.
Yet.
You can, and you can't possess them either.
Can
for
you
bait.
use a part of a goby like a tail? Say you want a perch fish, and can you cut the tail off? Because we know perch kill them gobies and everything. Can you cut a tail off a goby and use that for bait?
No.
Okay.
Your best bet there is to go to your local tackle shop and buy something that looks like a goby, like a tube, or there you go. You want to mimic a goby? There's tons of great baits out there that mimic a
But
goby.
if you catch something else, like we've heard of the 4 bad carps, the big head silver, help me out, big head silver, black, grass carp. If you catch one of those 4, and I've never heard of anyone catching one on a rod and reel, I think it's going to be extremely rare. If you do catch one and everyone has a phone with them and you've used your phone to ID it and you know, for example, it's a grass carp, you know it's a grass carp, like you're 100% sure, gut it, and then there's a phone number you can call, the invasive species hotline, or call it while you're on the water, see if you can talk to someone. They'll
Okay.
advise you what to do. If you can't talk to anyone, but you know it's one of those 4 species, gut it, because they have to be eviscerated. Keep it. Someone's going to want to see it, test it, and do their biology work with
If they
it.
really
Okay.
want to find one, put out a reward.
The problem is
Yeah.
there's some odd species, and some people might not know what it is. They think it's this or that, and you don't want to end up killing a threatened species or something that's endangered, right?
Yeah, no, for
So
sure.
you got to know what it is. Work through the key. Call the phone number. Go on your phone. It's easy to find. And
Well, we got to move along with the questions here
Okay.
because we're trying to keep these videos under a half hour, guys, but we're not always successful. So
What is the best part
we
about
go.
being a conservation officer?
There's lots of good parts to it. I guess my favorite part would be catching someone intentionally breaking the law, like going out and breaking the law on purpose. Going out and catching, for example, too many fish and doing it on purpose. And it's catching people committing blatant offenses on purpose.
Yeah, and rightfully so. You know, Kevin's not here to go out and make a living at busting people, but he's here to protect what a great fishery we have, and we want that fishery to be around for years. He's an outdoorsman just like us, and he wants to enjoy it for years to come, and he wants his kids, or I don't know, do you have kids, Kev?
I have one.
He wants them to enjoy fishing and just want it to be there for down the road. One of those ways is by educating people and protecting our waterways, and that's what he does. So.
I got a question for you. So you carry a weapon.
Yes.
Have you ever had to draw it?
No.
Have you ever discharged it into the floor of your boat by accident?
No.
I got a better idea, okay? If you want to really save time and money, they should give these guys tasers. Okay, think about it. If you're an aluminum boat, you got a whole gaggle of thugs, right? You tase the boat.
Yeah, there you go.
Instantly.
You go. I'd like to tase you sometimes, John.
All right, let's move on.
Okay, here's the next question, and this one's pretty self-explanatory too. John's given me all the weird questions, but they're good questions. Anyway, so if I'm jigging for walleye on the Detroit River and snag one, or anywhere for that matter, and snag one in the I can't pronounce this word,
Advertently.
Okay, there we go. We'll let them say it for me. Do you have to release it?
Yes, any fish that you're going to keep that you foul hook,
Okay.
you have to release. It's a simple answer.
Let me ask you
Simple.
this. If a walleye
Here we go.
foul hooked near the face, okay, people will say, you snagged it, okay. How come when it's muddy I don't snag any, period? It's because they're darting at it, they overshoot it, and they're getting hooked somewhere else. When it's muddy, I never snag any, so they're not biting it. So this fish is targeting my lure, and although I hooked it somewhere else, is that still considered a snagged fish that must be released?
Yeah, if you foul hook it, it doesn't matter what kind of fish it is, you have to immediately release it.
There's your answer.
There you go.
Okay, so if, on another similar note, if you keep a fish that's out of season and struggling a bit after you unhook it, can you put it in your well to help it survive and revive it? Or if you catch a fish that is out of season, can you quickly hold it up for a picture before releasing it? Or does it have to be basically unhooked while out in the water?
So to answer your first question, it's two-part. You have to immediately release it. Even if it's hurt and not struggling, you still have to release it. Second part of the question, currently right now, you still have to immediately release it, but I've read some information recently where they may be putting a proposal forward to create some type of new legislation where you would be able to, in some circumstances, quickly measure it or throw that fish and then release it. But currently, the way the law stands in both situations, you have to immediately release them as quick as you can.
I'm pretty sure that answers 16 and 17, John, of your questions.
Okay.
So I'll let you go ahead with the next
When
one.
a bass tournament has a live release boat and they take dozens of bass on board, aren't they technically over their limit?
No, because the live release boats for competitive fishing tournaments require a license to transport more fish than the person is allowed to have on their boat. So they need a license from the ministry to be able to do that, and they do have one.
Yeah, I remember that. Actually, when I used to fish Rose City Bassmasters, it was a small group of guys, but we'd all take turns, and they'd have a couple of us in release boats, like our own boats. Especially up near Mitchell's Bay, it's really shallow, and a lot of the fish weighed in at the tournaments were smallies. So we drive them way out past the mile markers there and do a good release on them. So Yeah, that's a great question, John.
So yeah, they need a license, and then the licenses will have conditions attached to them and rules you have to follow. But that's how they are allowed to do it.
Perfect. What does the M&R do with fish when they confiscate them?
So there's officers all across the province. I can't speak to what other officers do, but what I do and my colleagues do, we know a lot of people that don't fish but like to eat them, and we give away all of the seized fish to people in the community to eat.
Oh,
I don't waste them.
Yeah. So they are getting, they're not going to, they didn't die for no reason, which is good.
They're all given away.
How many conservation
Excellent.
officers are there in Ontario?
So it fluctuates probably on a weekly basis because people retire and they do some hiring here and there. But safe to say right now it's 209 conservation officers that are field conservation officers, boots on the ground. 209.
You guys are busy, because I wonder how many licenses are sold in Ontario. That's
A lot.
Yeah,
and
that's-
recently, a lot more.
You guys got your work cut out for you down there. Do conservation officers have less or more enforcement authority than a police officer? Or is it kind of equal?
No, it's so a conservation officer has all the authorities to enforce fish and game laws. Not all police officers have the authority to enforce all fisheries rules and regulations, because most of the fisheries rules and regulations is federal legislation. It's the Federal Fisheries Act and the Ontario Fishery Regulations. So in order for a police officer to enforce that legislation, which they may or may not be able to, they have to be designated as a fisheries officer and they need to take the training.
Okay.
So it depends on the police force and what training they have taken or haven't taken. So it depends. It's dependent on the actual police force.
Awesome.
In terms of, I'll get into feathers quickly, but in terms of like waterfowl hunting,
Yep.
So again, it's federal legislation that applies to most of it that you enforce. It's the Migratory Birds Convention Act and the regulations, and you have to be appointed what's called a game officer, which I am. So if you're not appointed as a game officer, you cannot enforce it. Some police forces are, some can do it, but if you haven't been appointed, you can't. So it's
Awesome.
So it depends.
And guys, I just want to say from past experience, I mean, the conservation officers, they've always been really good to me. Like I know, I used to do a lot of hunting, and I've been in the marsh, and we've had birds coming in on us, and I've actually had the conservation officer tuck right in behind our blind and let us finish off our shoot before he checked us. So there's a lot of respect both ways for them there.
Yeah, and if you got any questions, we always have these books available. This is just a summary. This is not the full Fish and Game Law of Ontario. If you have questions, a lot of it's available in these free books
Yeah.
from the province. All right, here's a good question. If I'm fishing in the Detroit River, how do I determine whether I'm on public or private water? And although someone might own a section of the riverbed, can they own the public water or fish that are over top of said riverbed?
So to find out who owns the property, if anyone, go on the town, the municipal, the city website that you're fishing adjacent to. So let's say I'm fishing in the lower Detroit River in front of Amherstburg. Go on Amherstburg's website, look for the interactive map. You'll be able to pull that up, do a little bit of clicking where you click show property lines over an air photo, and it will show you every person's property in the entire town that's private property with the yellow line. So some people own out into the river and own the bed of the river.
Yep.
Or lake. Some people don't. It just depends. One person on one lot might own out into the river, the neighbor doesn't. So it's a case-by-case basis. Go on there and look. If somebody does own the property, they don't own the water, or I've never seen a deed that shows someone owning the water column, and they don't own the fish.
Okay, so in a canal, if they have a privately owned canal where they own the lake bed and they dug it out and the federal fish and federal water float in there, can you take your boat in there and not crossing someone's land? Can you go in there with your boat and fish?
I think you have to be passing through
So again, this is one of those questions where there's no yes or no answer. It would determine what the person's deed actually says, which is going to be different. Every property owner's deed is going to be different. That's a little bit of a different situation where the canal has been dug out. So you would have to know what the deed says, but let's just say you're just on the Detroit River fishing in front of houses. People could own that property, and some of the hunt clubs down where you live own way out to the channel, and they actually post it in the fall because they own it. Which means they own the bed of the water. They don't own the fish. It's navigable water. You can go through it, but they own the bottom, and if you anchor or put decoy weights out or touch bottom or stand on it, you're trespassing.
Okay. Excellent.
So it seems to me it's the marina and the canal thing is the sticky issue, and there's no clear answer, and you need to look up the deed, which could be over 100 years old.
Could be.
But it would say, if they own the fish and the water, it would say in that deed.
It should.
And if it does not, you can go in and fish.
Yes, but if they own the bottom, again, you can't touch the bottom.
That's fine. That is very clear, and that's been a sticking point forever. And that's a clear answer to me.
And there's no use in getting in a fight over it, guys. If you do have a discrepancy and you know, get a police officer down there, get a conservation officer down there. Don't drop the gloves and do something that's really going to affect you down the road.
Or just call me. I'll figure it out. There's some other agencies involved, like Transport Canada and the Navigable Waters Act. So it's just one of those questions.
Because there is situations too where there's a clause called hunter's harassment, you know, and you do get a lot of people who move somewhere and never heard hunting before and don't realize that it's actually legal there. And hunting's been going on for years. So hunters do have rights. And sometimes you might have to get a ministry officer or a police officer out there just to educate these people and let everybody enjoy the land that way. So
next question there, Big John.
Okay, how much is a fine currently for being caught without a license? Like maybe somebody forgot, or
we're not talking about having fish, just the license itself.
So if somebody was going to receive a ticket for fishing without a license, it's $125 plus a surcharge on top of it, which is a total of $155.
Okay.
Now, an officer also has the option of issuing a summons, say to a repeat offender, somebody who's did it 2, 3, 4 times. You could issue them a summons. They would have to go to court, and there you would seek a higher fine, a license suspension, permanent seizure of fishing equipment, that sort of thing. But at a minimum, if you receive a ticket, it's $155.
Can a conservation officer access private property to check for violations without a warrant?
Yes, to ensure compliance to fish and game legislation, yes.
Okay. Next question.
Yeah, I'm trying to read it.
So your bait shop, I can come in here anytime it's open, inspect your minnows like we do, your logbook, paperwork, that sort of thing.
So if you want to go in and check somebody's freezer, can you knock on a door and say, I'd like to have access to your freezer?
It depends if the freezer is located in a dwelling or in an outbuilding. So two different answers. In a house, you need a warrant, unless there's there could be some circumstances and ways where you wouldn't, but for all intent of purposes, you would need a warrant. In an outbuilding, something that's related to hunting, fishing, or trapping, you wouldn't need a warrant to go do the inspection.
So if next question, if I fish with a friend and we both catch a limit, but they don't know how to clean fish, can I bring both limits home for them to pick up later, or can they follow me home if I have both limits in my live well?
So they have to be with their fish. They would have to be with their fish, go to your house, watch you clean them.
Yeah.
And
so they can't follow you in a car, because they're now I'm in possession of 2 limits.
Correct. They have to have their limit with them in their car.
Okay.
You can't take everyone's fish with you.
All right, Kev, we're really happy to have you here. Last question is, what message or advice do you have for the local fishing community on behalf of our local conservation officers?
So just to keep yourself out of trouble, probably the most common offense that is written in the province of Ontario is fishing without a license. And a lot of times people are fishing without a license because they never looked at it.
Yeah.
They never looked at it before they went fishing, or they did look at their outdoors card and they only looked at the front of it. They're good for 3 years, the outdoor card, but they only bought their license for the year 3 years ago, and it expired 2 years previously on December 31st.
Yep.
But because they looked at the front of it, just looked at the expiry date of just the outdoor card, they didn't look at their license, and they get in a bit of a pickle.
And they don't mail you out a warning, hey, it's going to expire soon.
No,
That's on you.
Look at it yourself.
Yeah.
So that happens a lot, and you know, of course, you have people that intentionally fish without a license. They just chance it.
Yeah.
But yeah, for usually it's the people who don't fish a lot. They're not avid anglers. They go a couple times a year. Just look at your outdoors card and your license and make sure it's valid.
Thanks for coming on the show. This was
great.
awesome. This is something we've been talking about since day one of Grateful Anglers Podcast. And we're very fortunate to have you on here. And I hope it gives everybody a better understanding of what the Ministry of Natural Resources do and what their job is. And yeah, we just like to thank you,
No problem.
Officer Sprague, for.
Yep.
I've called you Officer Sprague, Kevin. I've called you all sorts of things today, but it's all good. And I've been pulled over by Kevin before, and you know he's he'll make it short and sweet. If you're good to go and you're legit, he can. I think the last time was 2 years ago on the river. You pulled me over, and I think it lasted for about 8-9 minutes, and I was still fishing while you were checking stuff.
And if you want to find out where they're biting, he's got the goods.
Oh, okay. Yeah. He'll give away all our secrets, won't he? No.
I don't tell people where people are catching fish.
Yeah.
Just me.
Yeah. You know where the fish are more than I do.
All right,
Anyways, go
yeah,
ahead.
thanks guys for joining us this week's podcast, and we'll see you next week for another awesome episode of the Grateful Anglers.
Cheers, guys.